Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to make this super simple artisan sourdough. If you are not already, please like and subscribe so that you do not miss the rest of our content. Today we are going to simplify things, and I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of my thought process and what I do. This morning I neglected to feed my starter last night, so this morning I fed this just at a 1-to-1 ratio, which I don't normally do. I really only do this when I'm in a really big hurry, because it'll rise very quickly, but it will also fall very quickly, and it's just not a great way to maintain your starter. But if you just need a leaven quickly, by all means, 1-to-1 is perfect. That is about 300 grams of starter. I don't need that much. All right, so I have my bowl with 750 grams of water, and then I'm going to do 250 grams of leaven. And I'm watching the scale because this is not how I normally do it. I normally measure accurately for the recipe, but we're living life on the edge today. And now I have my leaven inside my water, and I'm just going to break it up a little bit. You can use a dough hook for this, but I tend to try to get everything off of the spatula before I move to my dough hook. Now it's time to weigh in 1,000 grams of strong bread flour. I get mine from a company called Central Milling. I ship it in bulk. It is fantastic flour. I love it's their organic high protein bread flour. And it's incredible because it does have such high protein that you can blend it with a lot of other things and still get really amazing breads. So I am weighing in 1,000 grams of flour. And now I'm just going to use my Barlow & Co. dough hook, which is so beautiful. I talked about it in my last video on tools, and we're just mixing this all up. Now, if your dough ever starts to feel like it's really hard to mix in, what you need to do is just walk away for a second, let some of that flour absorb, and when you come back, it'll be way easier to mix. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Just going to put that aside. This has been sitting. I'll just get back to mixing it up. Now, because it's lower in hydration, it is going to be a little thicker, but as it absorbs all the water, it'll loosen up a bit. All right, looks like we are pretty much all mixed in. I got my little bowl scraper. This is a lifesaver. And now I'm just going to clean up the sides of my bowl, scrape off any dried on flour, and just kind of bring the dough together in the middle. But we're not really building any strength here. We're just bringing it together. You don't have to do this. You can skip it if you want to. But I find it way easier to clean the bowl after if you take just a little bit more care while you're making it. I'm just going to cover this up for about 20 minutes, and I'm going to clean up. I just cover mine with a disposable shower cap. You could use a damp cloth, but whatever you do, don't do dry, because it will just dry out. So you want either a wet cloth or a plastic shower cap, or even like a plate that's big enough. It's been about 20-ish minutes. You can see the dough is a little bit shinier. I'm going to get my fingers wet, and I'll show you. It's a lot stretchier. Not quite at window pane because it still tears, but pretty darn close. It's time to add our salt. I'm going to put my bowl back on my scale and my salt, and I'm just going to weigh in 20 grams of salt. And this is 2 loaves worth of dough, so that is just 2%. Because I did the salt without the leaven, I'm going to just sprinkle in a little bit of water. So that was about 4 grams. Alright, so I'm wetting my hands in water in the bowl right here. Now I don't want my hands dripping, but I want them wet. And I am just going to start squishing and dimpling and squeezing the salt into the dough. We want to make sure we're really getting it very well incorporated at this point. And my kids came in from playing outside, so it's getting a little louder. So I can still feel some little pockets of salt But it's pretty well worked in, so I'm going to give it just like 5 to 10 minutes to rest and kind of dissolve the salt, and then I'll come back and I'll work it some more and make sure that the salt is fully incorporated. It's now been resting for about 20 minutes. Shiny, very loose. I can still see a little bits of salt in there, so we're going to work it some more. With this simplified method, we're not going to do as many of the stretches and folds, so we want to really make sure that we're working the dough very well right up front. So I'm just getting my hand wet in my bowl. It's right here. And again, my hands aren't like dripping, but there's some moisture on them. So I'm just grabbing the dough. You can see how much stretchier it is. And I'm kind of cupping my hand like this and pulling it. This is often called the Rouleau method. Look at that window pane. I don't even know if I can show it. Maybe we'll see. Oh, there you can see it a little bit right there. Yeah. Super beautiful dough already. I'm just grabbing and pulling. Cleaning my bowl. Now, all the salt is pretty much worked in. Now I'm going to do some slap and folds on the counter. Let me get my hands wet again. Move this out of the way so you guys can see. Alright, so quite a bit of dough. This is 2 loaves worth. Wetting my hands, grabbing from the top. Yeah, there's a slice right there behind the camera. There you go. You do not have to do this very long if your dough is very strong. This dough is very strong. That's the benefit to using really, really good flour, is you don't have to work as much. Yes, you can use lower quality flour, but you're going to have to put in more effort. And then we're moving that into our bowl. And we're going to cover it again. Cover it and rest for about 20 minutes. We are very quickly losing light in my kitchen. Basically, I am just going to do 1 set of stretch and folds and 1 set of coil folds. I'm going to show you the coil folds first, because when you're doing the simplified method, it is, I would say, more effective, but I feel like more people know how to do stretch and folds. I'm just going to get my hands in under to the very bottom of the bowl, so there's nothing between my fingers and the bowl now, and I'm pulling my dough up and rolling it over on itself. And I'm doing the same thing, just building lots of tension and strength in the dough. And then this is when a heavy bowl comes in handy, lifting it all up and rolling it over, turning, and doing the exact same thing. Now it will get tighter with every coil fold. Now that is considered a set of coil folds. Super effective, and now I'm going to let it rest for 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll do a stretch and fold. Fully lost light, it's fine, we're making dough. This is what the dough is looking like now. It's soft and smooth, pretty strong. So now I'm going to do a set of stretch and folds. You can do either one. You don't have to do both. I just really love coil folds. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of get in here and separate the dough from the wall of the bowl. Oh, hi, baby. Tuck my hand under, and we're going to pull it up until it starts to tear, and then we fold it over. And then we're turning the bowl 90 degrees and repeating it. Whoops. No. Pulling it up, and it will get tighter with each turn, and that's good and normal. And then the last one. It's not as smooth or as pretty as when you do the coil fold, but this works just as effectively and is super quick. It does not take long. You just, and then you're done. So I'm going to cover this now. If you're really short on time, you can totally leave it here and just cover it and leave it out for a few hours. If not, you can do it as many times as you have time for. I usually do it about 4 times, just like 4 sets of stretch and folds. Tonight, I'm just going to leave this. This dough is already very strong. Hold on, sweetheart. 1 minute. Here, you want to play with this measuring cup? So I am just going to cover it, leave it out for a few hours, and then I am, depending on the time and depending on how the dough is looking, I'll either shape it or I'll just put this bowl straight into the fridge. Welcome back to my kitchen. Last night, I wasn't feeling super great, So I ended up just sticking the whole bowl in the fridge. So this is what it's looking like now. Huge. Honestly, I don't put it in cold. I don't shape it cold very often. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it works just fine, so that's what we're gonna do. So then you gotta get the handy dandy bench scraper. Now this is gonna degas it a little bit. That's okay. It is what it is. Again, this is imperfect, very simplified sourdough. Okay, now I've gone around the whole bowl. Where's my, there we go. Okay. Now, a lot of people prefer to work with their dough when it's really cold because it is more stiff, so it's kind of less sticky or less bouncy, I guess. I don't like to do it because I don't like my fingers to be freezing. And it's just not my preferred way, but it's totally fine and it'll totally work. So we are going to separate this out and do a tiny bit of lamination, and then we'll do our shape. I'm just going to take my bench scraper, and I'm just separating it out into two. I do feel like the dough feels significantly sturdier when it's cold. So if you're working with really high hydration dough and you're really struggling with it, it's probably not a bad idea to try it cold. So I'm just going to get my fingers wet. And I'm not going to be like super intense about this lamination. The dough's cold. I don't want to have my fingers in it too much. It will get stickier the more warm it gets. My kids are playing hockey in the garage on roller skates, and they needed helmets, so they put on their motorcycle riding helmets. Alright, and then just folding it all back in on itself. And I'm going to let this sit for a minute before I shape it, because that's pretty tight. So I'm just going to set that aside. I'll pull the second one in. I mean, this dough's like really not sticky, like hardly at all. So that's nice. It also helps to even out some of that fermentation so you get even flavor and bubbles throughout. It'll help even out that crumb. And I will often pat, see, trapped a little bubble in there. Not like a good normal CO2 bubble, but just one trapped in there from shaping. And folding it back in on itself, rolling that over. And I'm going to let that rest for a minute and just relax so that then I can shape it. Alright, so as we're waiting for the dough to relax, I'm just going to prepare my bannetons. So I'm going to do an oval and a round. This is a 9-inch, I believe. So I'm just going to dust it with some brown rice flour. When you're caring for your bannetons, oh, somebody's hurt. Unless there's like goopy stuff in there, which there isn't normally unless you're using a lot of inclusions, I just brush all of the flour out into either my sink or into the trash can. And then I will just remove, I'll just show you, I remove the liner like this so that it can dry. Other than that, that's it. Occasionally I'll like hand wash it, but it's kind of like cast iron seasoning and you want to be somewhat careful with it. Otherwise it's all going to go away and then your dough will stick to it again. So we're just dusting with brown rice flour. You could also use like brown rice flour mixed with rye or mixed with spelt or something with a little bit lower gluten content. But you want your dusting flour to not have tons of gluten in it. Otherwise it will get sticky. Oh. Hey, can you say mama? Oh, good job. So a little bit of a pre-shape since these are looking kind of funky. And I'm just going to shape them both into a bowl. Switch to just my hands so we can really force some of that tension into that. And any of these big bubbles, I always say if it's bigger than a quarter, like an American coin, that I pop it up because it's not actually benefiting the loaf. It's not like affecting the crumb structure. That's just purely under the surface. But you don't want to do too much because it can make the loaf tear open. But if it's right there on the surface and you can just easily pinch it out, I say why not. Okay, so that's one pre-shaped, and I'm going to let that sit for like 15 minutes. And I'll do this loaf. And then this hand is just kind of like a supporting roll. It just helps to support the dough, but I'm not actually putting much like force behind this hand. Just holding the dough steady. If you are wanting to learn more in depth about how you can make the process your own, or you want to learn my full process, I do teach the whole thing in my Learn to Leaven course. I will have that linked in the description below with a discount code for you. It is a fully self-paced online video course, and it is incredibly comprehensive, covers just about everything you need to know to make amazing bread at home. So now I'm just going to set this one aside. And we'll let those rest for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and reshape them. The dough has been resting for about 20 minutes now. So I'm just going to flip it over. I'm going to get my hands a little wet. I have my prepared banana tins just out of the frame. I'm going to separate it from the counter a little bit. And I'm going to do this one as the bowl. So I'm going to stretch up and down about 2/3 of the way. And then I'm going to give it a hug, one arm over the other. And then this bottom one, I'm going to wrap all the way up to the top so that we can then just flip it really easy. And exactly the same movement as I did before. Moving it into a very nice, taut little dough ball. See how it's like not even sticky anymore? I'm going to plop this down into my 7-inch banana tin. This is the size banana tin, 7 or 8 inch. That is proper for most household loaves. Okay, so now I'm going to just set that aside while I shape the other loaf. I'm just going to flip this one. This is not very hydrated dough. This is fairly low in hydration, so I don't need to do all the fancy stitching because it doesn't require that much tension built. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to roughly make this into a little bit of a rectangle. Now you can see that this part is thicker up here. So I am just going to bring this up to here. And then pull out, tuck it over. And then rolling. Bringing it back. This is really where we're building our tension, and then I'm pinching the ends, kind of sealing up the little bumps, I guess. Move it into my hand, and then we're going to kind of squeeze it a little bit as we put it in the banana tin. And then I'm going to just let this rest for about 5 minutes. So these have been resting for about 10 minutes now. They're not quite so shiny. So we're just going to stitch these closed. This just gives a little bit more tension. You don't have to do it, but why not, right? If you're going to put in all the effort to make high hydration sourdough, you might as well make it look as good as you can. Okay, so just, there's no real like method to it except that we're just bringing it all into the center until there's a decent amount of tension. And then we just stitch it up. 1 second, sweetheart. I'm done right now. And I'm just going to dust these with brown rice flour and go put the baby down for his nap. Because clearly it's time. So I'm just going to let these sit out at room temperature for a couple hours until they're really puffy and pass the poke test. And then I'll stick them in the freezer for about 30 minutes while the oven preheats. And we'll get them baked. Okay, so this is what our dough is looking like now. It's very wobbly, maybe even a touch over. That's okay. I'd way rather have over fermented dough than under fermented dough. So just spread a little more brown rice flour. Yeah, if I poke it, it is passing the poke test, which means that the poke is staying rather than springing right back up. So I'm going to cover this and stick it in the freezer for like 30 to 40 minutes while my oven is preheating. I don't normally bake from frozen. Normally I'm doing an extended cold proof, but this is my modified process, I guess. This is just me working with life. And so it did end up going in the freezer for a little while. This just helps solidify the dough, so it's easy to score, will help it get a better oven spring. So I dusted it with brown rice flour just to make sure that it doesn't stick to the parchment paper. And I'm just going to flip it out. So I'm just going to brush off some of the excess brown rice flour, or rather smooth it out. We're not really brushing much of it off. Use my baker's twine and mark some lines in the flour. This just gives me a visual idea of where I want to score. I'm just going to do some simple wheat stalks here.
Can we please someday get these batteries?
Maybe, but just so you know, I am filming.
Okay, I definitely want to get these batteries.
And I'm keeping my blade straight up and down for my decorative score. And I am doing all the decorative scoring before I go in and do the expansion. This will help it open up better. Let's do some little ones. These ones won't open up a ton, but they will be pretty. So the first one, I do go all the way across, but this one, I'm just going to the center. Oops, did not get that. Okay. And you want to make sure that you're really getting it pretty deep, but also even. That's what that's looking like. And now I will get that put into the oven. This one is a little bit warmer. You hear that? Oh, sounds so good. This one is cool. I don't worry too much about the bottom getting brown. It's still soft. Like, that's not going to like break your teeth or anything. So I can't lift this other one up because I literally just pulled it out of the oven, but it's pretty. Thank you for coming to bake with me. And enjoy your artisan bread.